Welcome to the Stack of Stats podcast. I'm Pam Maldonado with my girl KellyInVegas, bringing you all of the analytics behind the NFL bets for Week 3. Kelly, my girl, after starting 4-1 in Week 1, we went 2-3 last week, 6-4 on the season. What happened?
Well, the Ravens gave up, 28 points in the fourth quarter. That doesn't help. The Saints couldn't overcome after Lattimore and Evans got in a fight. And outside of that, I have no words to the Washington Commies. They're pretty much on my do not bet list, except I sent them on my long list this week.
I was going to say, except you just sent me a list that had the commies on there. I'm just
I try to send you like a long list because I know we're just different types of bettors, right? Like right. I'm looking for market moves. I'm looking for situations. I'm looking for overreactions, and you're looking at a lot more analytics, right?
Right.
And I appreciate that that blend that we have, but sometimes it ends up like this, where I send you a list of 7-8 games, and you're like, "Yeah, we don't agree on anything," and I'm like,
on anything. So last week,
disagree, or we just
opposites. We're opposites. We'll talk about it. But what do you think about this week? Is there anything up on the board? Do you feel like the books are trying to look for like trap spots? What do you think about the difference between a week 2 and a week 3 right now for where we're headed? Unders are hitting at a high clip. What do you think about underdogs, maybe favorites? What's going on?
Yeah, underdogs are hitting at an extremely high clip. And of course, I sit down here, Pam, and my note sheet's on the opposite side of my desk. Thursdays and Fridays are crazy for me. So I appreciate everybody bearing with me in my insanity. But we have 9 home underdogs this week. So I immediately go gravitate towards them. Who can win at home? And then particularly some of those short road underdogs. Which team at home is maybe being a little overvalued? Home field advantage is kind of tricky in the NFL, if you will. Some teams, great home field advantage. Lambeau Field, for example. Other teams, like the Chargers and the Rams at SoFi, it's half of the other team. So sometimes it's a standard. In college, it's a lot different. It's rated 1 to 6. Sometimes I would give just a little bit, maybe even a 6.5. But in NFL, it's 1 to 3 for me, Pam. And so to kind of look at teams like maybe the Falcons going into Seattle. Well, the 12th man used to be great. Right? That Monday night game against the Broncos, the 12th man came to play. Are they going to really care about playing the Falcons on Sunday afternoon? That's kind of where I'm trying to sift through and figure out if there's any value that I can find for week 3. And all I can find is ugly, godforsaken, terrible bets. And like how disgusting is the Titans +2? Like, it's just like, do you want to be part of that after Monday night? Like, we just saw them get obliterated by the Bills, which is kind of what the Bills' new MO is, right? Do we want to back the Broncos +1.5 after how terrible we've seen Nathaniel Hackett coach? There's just so many
Nathaniel can't hack it.
There you go.
Dad joke.
No, that's actually a really good joke, because I actually said today on another show, okay, who gets fired first? And all of a sudden, now the Colts are 0-2. Frank Reich's sitting right there at the top of that list. I'm not sure that he should be, but Broncos are not going to fire Hackett, at least not this year, unless something really catastrophic happens and everything just goes to hell in a handbasket in Denver. But as far as this week goes, I have one best bet. Best bets historically have been really good. I did lose 4 of them last year. So let's hope we're just going to have like a nice 6-week stretch here where I can just pick some winners. And of course, I already have a nice trophy. Green Bay +2.5 is now Green Bay +1. And in the contest, of course, it's a pick 'em.
It's a pick.
That's because what the contests, depending on which casino, and they're pretty much all the same. What I like about certain online contests, Office Football Pool, for example, Pam, is that they're stale numbers because they use the Monday openers. And so, like, I got the Colts +6.5. I don't really like the Colts +6.5. I was looking for a 7, but now that it's at 5, I'm going to grab that 6.5. I did the same thing with Green Bay here, and I actually love Green Bay in this spot. Green Bay 14-2 against the spread after playing the Bears. Kind of a little fun fact. So that's over the last 3 seasons, 4 seasons I can count. But that being said, I really like what I'm starting to see from Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. I don't know if you heard any of the rumors or anything swirling about how they didn't like each other and that there's been issues. And even if you watch some of the Aaron Rodgers interviews that I've watched lately, and they just give him all the grief about Jordan Love and how it's an insurance policy, because obviously he does the State Farm commercials. He's having a good time with it. And I think I like loose Aaron Rodgers a lot more than I like uptight Aaron Rodgers, which we have seen from time to time. I do think that Aaron Jones is going to be able to run all over this Bucs team, particularly missing a couple guys on the defensive side of the ball. And Tom Brady has no weapons. They just put Cole Beasley on his couch last Sunday on the practice squad. Are they going to need him? Probably not. Good. It looks like Godwin is still questionable amongst a couple other players, but I'm actually playing against the Bucs here, and that is the Bucs have scored 2 offensive touchdowns. Just 2. They've had the benefit of some good luck. And last week, as I mentioned, all hell broke loose in the second half of that Saints game. I can blame it on the fight. I can blame it on Jameis. I can blame it on Mark Ingram. I can blame it on Olave. There was a lot of mistakes. And that game was 3-3 at half, and it looked very competitive. I actually see this Packers game being a low-scoring game as well. I can see this being like a 17-14 type of finish where Aaron Rodgers, who's seeking not only regular revenge from the NFC Championship game, but double revenge in this situation. Somebody did bring up to me, though, that Aaron Rodgers historically plays terrible in the state of Florida, and I could not find any data points to back that up, whether it be Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa, or even the Saints game that got got moved to Jacksonville last year because of the hurricane. So we'll see how it ends up playing out for me. I don't love this pick. I do love that the line moved in the direction. And I love that I've got this trophy ready to cash on, you just walk up to the window with your trophy and they say, here, we're going to give you your bet money anyway, whether it wins or loses. Don't we all wish? But I do really like the Packers this weekend in this situation. And I think that the line should be closer to a pick 'em. So at 2.5, bookmakers were kind of giving us a gift early in the week, and I decided to gobble it up.
Well, Kelly already gave away her best bet, but just a reminder, just in case you're new to the pod, of what it is that we are doing. We are making 5 against the spread picks each week in the NFL for a contest. Automatically in is Kelly's best bet. Automatically in is my best bet. And then together we try to come up with the 3. So Kelly's best bet being the Packers moved down from 2.5 for the contest. It is a pick. Obviously, we are rolling with it. In your favor, Kelly, through 2 weeks, and you mentioned a little bit about it, is that Green Bay leads the league in first and second down plays that have been converted into a first down or a touchdown. That's stellar. Why? Because the Bucs are actually last in the league for converting first and second down plays into a first down or a touchdown. You said something to me that was very interesting about how Aaron Rodgers is starting to show that he's a little bit more loose. He's kind of having a little bit more fun. What if Nathaniel Hackett was the problem? And it was never Matt LaFleur. It was the offensive coordinator that he never liked. Now he's over to Denver. You were one of the people, I believe, that said that Aaron Rodgers was potentially going to go to the Broncos. Well, he didn't. Nathaniel Hackett did. He stayed.
Wow.
What if he was like, bye, Hackett, and now he gets to have the team that he wants?
That actually is not that far-fetched, Pam. That was not something that ever crossed my mind, but there have been some issues over the years. I truly believe that's why McCarthy got the boot, is because Aaron wasn't happy. And you can tell on the sideline rapport with him and Matt LaFleur that there is maybe it's not a friendship per se, but at least a working friendship where they're out there having a good time. And I think that LaFleur gives Rodgers that long leash that he needs. I not to get into astrology, but me and Aaron Rodgers almost have the same birthday. I totally get why he is the way that he is. And he doesn't want anybody, hovering over him, inspecting everything that he's doing. So the fact that LaFleur is giving him the ability to call audibles on his own, to be able to look to the sideline and Aaron's like, no, kill this play, I want to do this, is probably refreshing for him, frankly.
My one area of concern, but it's just because I look for props, I look for stuff like that, is you were talking about how Aaron Rodgers doesn't do well against in Florida teams. The last time these two played was back in 2020, but my argument to that, and he went 0-2 in those games against the Bucs. My argument to that is Tampa is not the same team. You mentioned it. All the players that are out, that is definitely going to be and it's reflecting in the offense for Tom Brady. Lack of weapons. It's starting to bite them in the ass. Green Bay starting to look a little better. You can always talk about lack of weapons for Green Bay and for Aaron Rodgers. It's Aaron Rodgers. You put anybody downfield, he's going to figure it out.
You nailed it.
you can't say the same about Brady. He does have those players that he trusts more, those players that he feels comfortable with. And if he doesn't have that rapport, then that doesn't that you can see it in the offensive stats. They're starting to lack a bit. So that's where we are with that. Automatically in, and that's in, is Packers at a pick at the Bucks. My best bet. This is where we start to be opposite. I said you and I don't agree on anything. It starts with my best bet. You sent me Vikings as your second favorite matchup of the week. It is my best bet backing the Lions +6 at the Vikings. And for me, it is largely, I know that we're talking about, you mentioned it earlier in the pod, how home advantage is kind of like a big thing. Typically for Minnesota, they're one of the better against the spread teams at home. However, I mean, I'm not really impressed with what I've seen in either game from the Minnesota Vikings, even though we had Vikings in week 1. 0 touchdowns in the second half through 2 games for Kirk Cousins and this offense. 9 drives have resulted in 3 interceptions, 3 punts, 2 field goals, and they're one of 3 teams to do so. You're in the same category as the Seahawks and the Cowboys with Cooper Rush. Detroit is looking pretty freaking stellar. The Lions have scored 30+ points in the first 2 weeks of the season. I do expect some regression, but if I'm looking at consistency, the Lions have been in the top 10 in scoring in all 4 quarters for both games. The Vikings rushing defense, this is the big problem area. 28th in opponent yards per carry. Lions running back DeAndre Swift and company, first in yards per rush attempt, averaging 7.2. So even though maybe the Lions is going to have some regression when it comes to scoring, I still heavily believe that a healthy DeAndre Swift is going to do some damage to this Vikings defense, because I have been targeting this defense in player props back-to-back weeks and both have cashed. It's a continuation problem. Maybe the Vikings get the win, Lions get the cover, but I love liking the Lions +6 on the road to the Vikings. This is one of the line moves that hasn't moved, actually. It has been 6 all week. You love the Vikings, though. Can't do anything about it.
Of 5.5, and I thought, God, I hope I'm not wrong here. I did lay 6 with Kirk Cousins, and I laid it on Monday night as soon as the line came out after the game. And that's because this line should be 7.5. It should be 8. Vikings have one of the better home field advantages in the NFL. This is a pure numbers play. Do you think I'm excited about backing Kirk Cousins? I told everybody on Monday, I'm like, why? What? I've been screaming this for years. Why would you bet Kirk Cousins in primetime? And I made that mistake once against Green Bay, and they were catching almost double digits, and they got obliterated. It was like 31-10. And everybody goes, why did you go against yourself when you know that you don't back Kirk Cousins in primetime? Well, the good news is this isn't primetime. And historically, the Lions have played really well against the spread in the NFC North. But I really think that this Vikings defense is going to have to step up here. And they've got to get the running game going with Dalvin Cook, because that is exactly what they didn't do on Monday. And if we can't get the running game going, guess what? Justin Jefferson is not going to score any points because Kirk Cousins gets thrown out of his element. And I do see this being probably a touchdown type game. And that's why I thought, I'll take the 6 and need a little bit of the overreaction spot here. And that's the main reason. I'll be honest with you. I don't have like a definitive play on the Vikings other than that there's a significant amount of line value enough to make me want to place a wager on them.
You were talking about, I figured this would be one of the topics that came up in the conversation, and we both mentioned how the Vikings have the best against the spread home record. They actually have one of the best straight up records at home. Against the spread, they've been a little bit washy. 4-3 in 2019, 2-6 against the spread at home in 2020, 4-4 against the spread last season. So the against the spread record is definitely not as strong as their.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why I wanted for Zimmer to get fired, because it was really good at one point in time, and then it really started.
It diminished over the seasons, yeah. Well, this is my best bet. Lions +6. I love it. And I even did take the Lions on the money line at +190 because I feel confident in this team. I like Dan Campbell as a head coach. I love the atmosphere that he's bringing into it. And if you have very much talk about like a mental mindset in tennis, and if you very much, and I feel like it's just translate into other sports. If you have like a healthy relationship with your team, with your coach, with your offensive coordinator, things are going to fall into place. And this is a really good team environment. I love them as underdogs.
I agree. Dan's changing the culture in Detroit, and that's how it has to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So automatically in is Kelly's best bet with the Packers at a pick, and automatically in is my best bet of the Lions +6 at the Vikings. Now everything else, you want to just like draw names into a hat and hope they hit, because that's kind of where we're headed.
That's basically where we're at here. So you gave my second favorite, if you will, the Vikings. Do you have a second favorite?
You and I do agree on one game, and that is the Patriots +2.5 at home to the Ravens. I am terrified of this, but logically, I think it makes sense because you have the Patriots who are coming off back-to-back road games in their season opener. Just that is really hard to do with a second-year quarterback. Back-to-back games in week 1, week 2 against really good teams, and now you have a first home game advantage. I don't know how much of a home field advantage they have, but you have a home team. Can't talk about it. You have Mac Jones, who's finally getting his home opener against a Ravens defense that has just been absolutely demolished. They are last in the league for total defense. I'm not convinced that Mac Jones necessarily has like the arm strength, the weapons, the offensive power to exploit a Ravens defense, but I do believe that the Patriots defense is going to be pretty good. And Lamar Jackson, what I always look at is that pass rush. And Lamar Jackson has been absolutely stellar in week 2. He had over 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He looked perfect. We were on them last week against Miami. But what has been the theme in week 1 and week 2 is that he is number 1 in protection rate, but he has not been pressured. Only 4 of his passes. How much have we seen him throw? A fuck ton. Only 4 of those fuck ton passes have been thrown under pressure, because the Dolphins and the Jets are 28th and 22nd in sack percentage. New England is top 10 in sacks. So this is finally going to be a true test. Is Lamar as healthy, as good right now without some of his key weapons, with some of those injuries? He can't handle it all on his own. So I like the Patriots after back-to-back road games to open up the season, getting a home game with a solid pass rush against I'm going to say like a falsified stat line of how good this offensive line for the Ravens actually is.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't trust this Ravens defense. Pam, I just looked up something because I forgot to mention it earlier in my little rant. First time in 12 years, 12 NFL seasons for a team to blow a 21-point fourth quarter lead. Luckily, they gave up one more touchdown, so they even got to lose. That made me happy because if that game would have landed 3, I think I would have been much more upset than them losing outright. They definitely deserve to lose that game. And in college, I would kind of look and say, all right, do they lose that game twice? Well, professionals usually don't. But now you're going on the road to see Bill Belichick, who is excellent as an underdog. And frankly, he's kind of got Harbaugh's number. I don't have the specifics in front of me, unfortunately. I tried to find that, but I don't have access to the databases that some of the guys at Wager Talk do, and I should have sent it to him. But Bill Belichick, 33-17 straight up and 40-20 against the spread in New England against teams that are off a straight up loss as a favorite. So that's kind of a crazy little stat line, but it's interesting when you're catching points at home with Bill Belichick and what he's able to do. He kind of reminds me of like, and this is like a bad comparison, but the first one that comes to mind, like a Bill Snyder, right? He's able to do so much more with less, right? He doesn't have Tom Brady anymore. He doesn't have any big shiny weapons. He's got a pretty solid defense, and that's something the Ravens don't have. We saw it happen last week. I'm with you on the Pats here. I do like the Pats quite a bit. I would say they're probably my 4th or 5th down the list. But that's only because the market's at 3 and we're getting 2.5 in the contest. If the contest was at 3, I'd put up no fight, but I think we should put the Pats in there because it is something that we do agree on.
It's probably the only thing that we agree on. But if you're giving up 300 yards to Joe Flacco, making him look like a freaking stud in week 1, I mean, yeah, then this defense from the Ravens is vulnerable. And Mac Jones, I do like him as a quarterback. I really wanted him to win the Heisman back in college. I think he has a lot of potential here. He has the playmakers, and more so, he's behind a good offensive line. So I trust him to kind of exploit this defense just like Flacco and Tua Tagovailoa have. So automatically in then, great. We have 3. This is going smoothly because that's the one that we agree on. Everything else, not so much. All right. So I know you were on the Broncos. I'm opposite. You were on the Colts. I'm kind of opposite. You were on basically we're opposite on everything else. So there's not a lot for me to love this week, to be honest. It
Same.
was very difficult for me to find 3 games, much less 5. I liked my best bet, and that's about it. So everything else, explain to me your Broncos selection, and I'll explain to you my
Eh,
49er selection.
it's just the line move. Look,
Okay.
Denver should be a 3-point home favorite here. I think there's some overreaction. Jimmy G comes in after Trey Lance gets hurt, and all of a sudden he's so beloved again. Let me tell you how many 49ers fans were texting me last year after it was the NFC Championship. Was
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I had 3.5. Of course, the game lands 3, but they had the opportunity to win the game outright. And everybody in San Fran hates Jimmy, and then all of a sudden now they love him again. I think this is getting just a little overblown. I did put the Broncos in my teasers, but I'm not going to get to the window with the Broncos plus 1.5. I was just trying to send you that long list of some sort of hope. I mean, Denver's been horrific in primetime games, only winning
Mm-hmm.
1 of their last 10. And this is just pick the winner, Pam. Like what when you're a 1 point or 1.5 point home underdog, it's just pick the winner. I don't care if we use Broncos. I mean, I guess if there's nothing else, we
I don't
could.
agree with Broncos. I'm on the
Oh, see, so
49ers because
yeah, if you're on the
I'm
49ers,
remembering, I'm remembering like San Francisco, if you remember, maybe people don't, is they are a better road team actually. 6-3 straight up last year, 18-7 in the last 3 seasons, 11-10 straight up when playing at home. This San Francisco, for whatever reason, they just travel better. And this offense is, I know, I don't care if it was Jimmy G, Trey Lance, whatever. Like, we already know what he's capable of. I'm not using that as an argument. I'm looking at what you've done this season. And only 2 of the 21 total possessions for the 49ers have failed to gain. Only 2 have failed to gain a first down or a touchdown. Denver in the red zone is 0 for 6. Now, I know that's regression. Some of that is going to come back into play. But so as long as you have Nathaniel Can't-Hackett as a head coach, making those goal line decisions against a team that is historically better on the road, I definitely do love. And more so, what's the problem with Jimmy G is that he can't stay healthy. He's healthy because this is his first game. So as long as he's healthy, I trust him to control this offense on the road where they're historically better. I like 49ers at the Broncos. If we can't agree on that, then what about a game that wasn't on your list? Since we're opposite on mostly everything. What do you think about the Jags +7 at the Chargers?
well, I don't even. I think we have to use the Jags now because it sounds like Justin Herbert's going to be out. I only know this because he's on my fantasy team, and I've been
Oh,
getting blown up with text all day long. And I also was going to use
eh?
them in Survivor. So
Hmm.
I actually am okay if you want to use it just based on line value alone. Jags +7 makes a lot of sense. The line will be 3.5 with Chase Daniel, and everybody's going to want to bet the Jags at that point in time. But at last I heard, he did not practice today.
Interesting. I am looking that up at the moment. I don't even know how to use these fantasy apps.
Yeah, last
Just
I saw a
oh
couple of
yeah,
different books
questionable.
in Vegas put it back up, but we'll see.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Well, whether he was playing or not, I liked the Jags because the Jags are first in the league in turnover differential. They have forced 5 interceptions and only 2 forced fumbles. I always love looking at that stat and seeing how they're breaking it down because if you are forcing interceptions, that is talent. If you are forcing fumbles and recovering those, that's more of like the luck side of it that you can force it, but then you're also recovering that. That bodes well. Those forced interception bodes well for a team that is so pass heavy like the Chargers. And the Chargers, they beat Las Vegas by 1 score, despite Derek Carr. 1 score, despite Derek Carr throwing 3 interceptions, still allowed 300 passing yards, and he was sacked 6 times. And the Jags have a really great offensive line. So I loved, with or without Herbert, I loved the Jags anyway.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. Based on the last thing I read, still dealing with discomfort from his rib cartilage. You got to decide, like, from a fantasy perspective, it's a risk reward playing him, but
Right.
also, more importantly, I think in real life you just stay off this, but I think it's worth a gamble here, Pam, to say, all right, let's take the 7 here with the Jags. I do think this Jags team is similar to what we spoke about the Lions. I think Doug Peterson's doing a really good job in Jacksonville in terms of getting this team and the culture to rally around Trevor Lawrence and giving them kind of that ability to go out and win games. I mean, we know that the Jags own the Colts, but
Right.
that was more than just owning the Colts.
Right. We can put it on the queue for now, just in case we don't agree on anything else. I don't just mind it. Just because we're gonna get the line saved, you talked about it. We're gonna get 7. Likely the line is gonna drop down to like closer to a 4 or something. Do you want to just automatically lock it in?
I mean,
Let
it makes sense to me at this point. The only other thing that I was really looking at, and I mentioned this during the opening,
you love the
kind of had my
Colts.
eye on the Titans a little bit more. It
Oh,
sounds disgusting.
that is
Just
not on your list.
I know, but I've been doing shows all day long, and there are certain times.
All right.
One of the things that I like about doing shows with like-minded people or even opposite-minded people, but are in the same space, is sometimes they'll give
Mhm.
you a stat or they'll give you some information, and you're like, maybe I should look at that again, or maybe I should just not bet this game. Very rarely does it keep me off a game I've already bet, or do I bet off of it unless it's something catastrophic. But for the most part, Las Vegas is not deserving of being a 2.5 point road favorite here. Point blank, period, the end. I just spoke about Justin Herbert being my fantasy quarterback, and I text my partners. I said, what are we going to do? They're like, we're going to start Carr. And I'm like, God, that sounds even worse. Like,
Well,
I
the line
don't
is 2, not 2.5.
two in the contest. I kind of figured so. I do think that Vrabel is a good coach. I do think that Vrabel can pick up the pieces from his team. Can they get the running game going with Derrick Henry? I mean, God, everybody keeps talking about how old he is. He's not that old. He's 28. And it's not like he's got a ton of miles on him either, but he was just absolutely miserable on Monday night. Just horrific. And I do think that the Raiders are probably going to be able to exploit that Tennessee secondary, but I do think Tennessee is just getting a little too much hate after what happened on Monday. I mean, I feel like teams play the Bills and you run into a buzzsaw. This team is just absolutely stacked. Of course they are, because in true Kelly fashion, I had them to win the Super Bowl last year, and that's usually how it plays out for me. I bet a team a year or two early. Outside of that, Pam, there's nothing else besides the list that I sent you.
Well, your
Uh,
third favorite, behind the Packers' best bet, behind Vikings, of which I'm on Lions, your third bet was the Colts. Now, I feel like every single person on the planet is going to be on the Colts, because I got so many DMs this week on Twitter of like, why is the line 6.5? That's fishy. Well, then the line moved down to 5.5, and that's what it
and
is for
it
the
is even
contest.
fishier. Yeah,
And now it's even fishier.
I got a text on Wednesday that was like, we're going to bet the Colts. And I didn't get it because I was middle of filming. And next thing I know, I refresh the odds screen. And I'm like, what? And then I look and he was like, I text you that we were going to bet the Colts. And I said, why couldn't we just wait till it got to 7? He goes, it wasn't going to get to 7. And that's one of those key numbers in the NFL that is always really interesting to me, is whether it's 7.5 down to 7 or 6.5 up to 7. It doesn't happen. It takes a lot of money to get there. So the fact that it came down to 6 and then even 5.5 was pretty shocking. I'm not sure that I trust Matt Ryan. That was just a pure numbers play with a stale contest line. I
Well,
did take 6.5, but we have 5.5 in this contest. So to
correct.
me, I think it's just probably a stay away. I
That
will say
I
this:
in my
NFL.
notes, in my notes, I put Kelly being contrarian.
Yeah, right. NFL home dogs coming off a shutout loss are 12-2-1 against the spread.
Lock
And that's
it in. Lock it in. Are you kidding me? Like, okay, so here's the reason. Okay. So initially I was like, this is dumb, Chiefs. But then I was like, okay, let me look into it. I always look into the details. And one thing that I do have going for them is, what was the reason why I was liking why I mentioned we like the Patriots? Back-to-back road games to open the season. That's exactly the Colts. Back-to-back road games to open the season. This is their first home opener. Great. Check mark number 1. The Chiefs win, maybe, but the Colts get the cover because historically, under head coach Frank Reich, the Colts are 5-10-1, 7-8 against the spread in September. This is not anything new for this team, but if you also look in the historical context, why have they struggled early in the season? Because you have had a brand new quarterback to start literally for the 5 seasons straight. You had Andrew Luck, you had Philip Rivers, and now you have Matt Ryan. Like, there's just been a flux of change here at the quarterback position for 5 seasons straight. They're going to figure it out, because he always does. Because later in the season, I think it's like week 6 and on, he has like 26-10 record. So he figures it out, but it takes time to gel. Other than that, Indianapolis has allowed a 71% completion rate. Forget their defense. Back-to-back road games, that's what I was talking about. But the KC defense last year, This is the point that I was trying to make. The KC defense last year and the year before, typically, historically, with this Chiefs defense, they have struggled against the run. They were 19th in rushing defense last season, but they were 30th in opponent yards per carry. Well, what does that bode well for? 2021 rushing leader in Jonathan Taylor. Despite the Colts being 0-2, he is still third in rushing yards so far through 2 games, and he is top 12 in yards per carry among running backs. And that's because they were shut out last week. Now you're getting a home game against a Chiefs defense who has played 2 non-rushing offenses in weeks 1 and week 2. This is literally their first and single test. I know that it's 5.5. We're no longer getting the 6.5, but honestly, does it even matter at this point? If you're not covering
land 6, of course they do. So I don't want to say it doesn't matter. I think it's less than 10% of the time, though. I got to find that chart and update it for this year. I've been really bad about my nerd sheets. But full disclosure, I'm with you. I think especially the fact that we agree, that makes me really happy, because everybody else I've told I like the Colts this week has just absolutely slandered me. And I said, but they can't stop the run. And they said it doesn't matter. You can't outscore the Chiefs. And I think that that's a really piss poor narrative. And so I'm with you. I think we take the Colts.
And it shouldn't matter.
Who I'm going to put in a Colts money line parlay with. It might be the Dolphins. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I initially liked the Dolphins and I laid off of them. I made a pick on a Tuesday, and the more I was looking at it, you know what? It's like I'm fading Lamar Jackson for having an absolute stellar game last week. Even though they lost, he still had like a nuclear offensive game. Is that going to be replicated in back-to-back weeks? And it's the same worry for me with Tua Tagovailoa. Is he just had a fantastic, I mean, it was just a big win for both of them. So I kind of want to fade those 2 teams who just like absolutely crush. Like, I think it's prove it that you can do it in back-to-back weeks. Miami, though, one of the best. They are. I wrote in my preseason, one of the things that I'm looking at is you want to back Miami as a home underdog, because they are literally number 1 against the spread in the NFL for the last 3 seasons against the spread at home as an underdog. And that was in a time of 2020 COVID. That was when the quarterback in Tua was injured in 2020 and in 2021. They had a shit offensive coordinator who just didn't know what like play calling was in the new league in a new up and coming league of passing offenses. And now you have better weapons. So I also like Miami. Do you like that? No. Was that just like a thing that you said?
I just was throwing it out there because I know that it's a nice little home underdog divisional. I think we have to go with the Jags. I just looked. 3 minus 120 is the new Chargers line.
3.
3
Jags are in.
So I think we're getting 4 points of value with Jacksonville. I don't think we overthink it there. And listen,
how about then?
Sunday morning, Justin Herbert wakes up and he feels like $1 million and he goes out there and he beats us. I don't know. I think we're getting 4 points of line value in a week where we don't really agree on a ton. And I think it's a solid play.
Okay, then. For then our 5th pick, would you feel better for the Colts plus 5.5 at home or the Dolphins?
I think I like the Colts. You and I are in lockstep there. I mean, literally, I just nodded my head every time you were talking because we just were like agreement. I would love to step in front of that Buffalo Bills buzzsaw. I'm just not sure I want to be decapitated just yet.
Well, then this was way easier than I thought it would be.
It was way easier.
Everything else on the list we're kind of opposite on, so that's like not even worth discussing. But okay, easy peasy. 5 against the spread picks are locked in. You have Kelly's best bet of Packers as a pick at the Bucks. My best bet of the Lions +6 at the Vikings. And then the other 3 that we're coming in, adding to the card is Patriots +2.5 at home to the Ravens. Jaguars +7 at the Chargers, purely because of the line move. Now it is a 3 in real life time. And then the Colts +5.5 at home to the Chiefs, which is scary. Our entire card is scary, let's be honest.
What are you going to do?
So I love it, though. I actually feel really good about the card because we talked about it. We are adding things that we're not forcing anything. We are agreeing on things, having a discussion, and coming to an agreement. And if we don't like it, there is another one, like you mentioned, the Miami. Maybe we're a little bit not in line with that one, so let's leave it off. But let's look at this one instead. I couldn't do Tennessee. I like how we do things. We discuss it, we approve it, we put it on. It's that simple.
Makes sense. Talk through, get pass on some ugly ones, and not that our card
think long, think wrong.
Yeah, that's what I said to start the year. I'm done with this like overanalyzing things. It's not worth it. And here we go. Here's to another 4-1 week because that elusive 5-0 just is just not going to happen.
It's not gonna happen.
The gambling gods will not give it to us.
Just when we least expect it, maybe it'll show up. But do make sure to follow Kelly on Twitter at KellyInVegas. You can follow me at Twitter at PamelaM35. Do make sure to like this video, comment, and subscribe. And you can catch us next week on Stack of Stats.